So I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Joel Muse. Joel grew up in a small French-Acadian village outside Yarmouth and has lived with anxiety most of his life. After leaving his career as a stock analyst because of burnout, he decided to launch Tranquility Online, a local startup that makes getting help for anxiety accessible and affordable. He's also decided to document the entire process with his video blog called Tranquility BLOG, and in fact, those of you who can see the stage, he's got a little tripod set up with his gear there. Love these millennials. Such a Luddite when it comes to that. Anyway, very cool. So, Tranquility BLOG. So Matt, I think you've got a video. Let's take a look at a short clip now, and then I'll invite Joel to the stage.
Well, I've been deep in this sleeplessness, I don't know why. Just can't get away from myself. When I get back on my feet, I'll blow this open wide and carry me home in good health. God, it's been so long, wide awake that I feel like someone else. I miss the way that you saw me, or maybe the way I saw myself.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joel Muse.
Test this mic. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Excellent. Is this my slideshow? Okay. So just as Greg said earlier, happy Bell Let's Talk Day. I really do think it is an incredible thing to be able to stand up on the stage and say that. Because about 13 years ago, I was in my last year of high school. And I had a stomach ache for 120 days in a row. And I didn't tell anyone. And it wasn't because I had eaten a really bad batch of Kentucky Fried Chicken. No. I was stricken with anxiety, and I was too ashamed to tell my mom, my dad, my brother, my friends, my doctor, or my school counselor. But I'm not here today to talk about my high school experience. I'm here to talk about what I was like as a child. I'm just kidding, I'm not. I just really want an excuse to put that picture of me, because look how adorable I look, come on. No, today I actually want to talk about what Bill has already been talking about, which is burnout. But I've already kind of started my story, so it'd be kind of cruel to leave you on a cliffhanger. So, just to get back, so 4 months of having anxiety, dealing with that on my own, alone, feeling isolated, eventually I became really depressed. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, because of the stigma that exists, and thankfully, days like today are making that easier, but because, especially at that time, I wasn't able to tell anyone about it until I finally hit rock bottom. And for me, after hitting rock bottom, I still wasn't ready to tell anybody. My shame was so strong that the only way I could figure out how to do it was to, one night, write it all down on a letter, show up to my school counselor's office, sit down in his office and say, I do not know how to tell you this, so here you go. He read the letter, he eventually looked back up to me and said, Joel, I can't believe this has been going on, and that no one has any idea that this is happening. He told me I deserve an Oscar for my acting abilities. Unfortunately, the acting didn't stop there because I didn't want anyone to know about this. It was also a few months until my final exams, and I was hoping to go to university, the next year. And my brain was definitely not anywhere near being ready or able to do that. So we talked to all of my teachers, and I asked them, or we asked them, can I take my marks up until this point in the year as my final marks? They understood, they said yes, but that's not what I was worried about the most. I knew if I didn't show up to write my final exams, all of my friends would start asking, where was Joel? And I didn't want to have to answer that question. So we came up with a scheme of sorts, and I showed up to every single exam and pretended to write them so that no one would ever know that Joel has a mental illness. So again, this is the importance of days like today. So, how did I get here today? Long story short, I saw my doctor, he put me on some antidepressants, I spent the 2 years of summer for those to kick in, and then I moved to Halifax, went to St. Mary's University, graduated in finance, got my CFA, and became a brilliant stock analyst. And then 6 years later, I burnt out. And I really like this picture because I think it really depicts what we often think burnout looks like. So if I told you I was working 80 hours a week, I had a pile of work this high every day, I had clients to deal with, and a boss that yelled at me every single day, you would say, yeah, Joel, of course you're burnt out. That's awful. But that was not the case. The case was, I actually worked a 9 to 5, I had tons of time to myself, my boss was a great person and didn't ever yell at me. So, what I did have though was a list of symptoms that seemed to not really make sense. The list is longer than this, but the main one that really, made it really difficult for me to perform my work was how tired and how much brain fog I had every single day. My work required me to read and write 20 to 30 page research reports on why Microsoft is a buy or sell. And by the end of the 6 years, I could barely even concentrate long enough to read a 10-minute email. Essentially, I woke every single morning feeling like I was hungover without the benefit of having a really awesome party the night before. I became a walking and talking zombie. This is what my day looked like. I would wake up at 8 a.m., grab the bus at 8:30, arrive at work for my an hour-long meeting at 9 a.m., grab breakfast at Tim Hortons, work through the rest of the day till 5:30, show up back home to my apartment, and then I would just take all my clothes off, jump in my bed, and have a nap, which half the time meant I woke up the next morning at 8 a.m. and tried to do it all over again. That's 14 hours of sleep, and I felt less rested than the time before going to bed. When I went to see my doctor, all he ever wanted to do was to treat each single symptom as a different ailment, and to give me a pill for this and a pill for that, and go see a specialist for this and a specialist for that. So in terms of chronic pain, that was one symptom I had, and that was all the people that I went to see just for that one symptom. I did a bunch of different tests to see if there was anything wrong with me. We started wondering about my GI. Did I have a parasite or something that was sucking all the energy out of me? Key warning here, if you guys can avoid the situation, the barium enema, not suggesting that anyone goes through that at all. So, you might be thinking, well, Joel, this all seems pretty obvious what was going on with you, but I led with the story that this was about burnout. At the time, me and my doctors didn't really have a good idea what was going on, and burnout wasn't really on my list of things that I was going through. Especially because every time I saw a new doctor, they would ask me, well, Joel, like, how's work going? Are you stressed out? And I would say, work 40, 45 hours a week, don't have a boss who yells at me. No, I don't really worry about that much. Are you depressed? Well, I haven't cried in 12 years, so how can I be depressed? The thing is, I think one of the main problems here was I was still taking those antidepressants that I had been put on 13 years prior. At this point, I was pretty numb and didn't really know what it was I felt about anything. So clearly this was not working, so I fired my doctor. I got a new doctor. And after 2 sessions with him, he checked my blood work, as usual. Had the blood work of a racehorse. But for some reason, I felt like shit every day, so I'm not sure what that was all about. He said, Joel, we have a specialist on staff that kind of deals with the symptoms you're talking about. Would you like to see her? I said, of course. And then he said, she's a psychologist. And I said, I don't think that's my problem, but sure, let's check it out. I left that first session with her, and I realized something was going on. She kept asking this extremely important question, which was, how do you feel about that? And I usually had no idea. And I would come up with answers like, angry? And she would look at me and say, you don't look angry, Joel. How do you know you're angry? I was answering that question how I thought a character on TV would answer the question, not how I knew what the answer was. So, how did I get to where I am today? Long story short, again, I kept seeing that psychologist and learned a lot about myself and how I feel. I eventually decided to tell work that I need to go on a short-term leave, and then I decided I never want to go there again, so I quit. And then I had to think to myself, what am I going to do next? And so a month before leaving my job, I actually, on Bella's Talk Day, decided that I was going to reveal all my secrets so that I didn't have to hide behind the shame anymore. And I detailed this entire story in a lot more detail than I have today. And it was just supposed to be this thing that a few friends might read. But 48 hours later, 4,000 people had read it, and it had been shared hundreds of times, and hundreds of people have sent messages to me telling me that they were going through the same thing. And a lot of that blog, which was called The Story of My Life, also included what I'm talking about today, which was the healthcare system and trying to kind of have doctors treat each symptom as different things instead of looking at a person as a whole. And so a lot of people were talking about how the system is broken. And then I realized I want to be part of the solution, not the problem. And that's when I founded Tranquility Online. So at Tranquility Online, we want to make getting help for mental health affordable, timely, stigma-free, personal, and accessible. And one of the main ways we're going to do that is we build an online platform that's based on cognitive behavioral therapy. One of the really cool parts about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short, is that one of the skills you learn is called exposure therapy. And so in other words, the things that make you the most anxious are the things that people usually avoid. And to get over that, the only way to do it is to actually face those fears. And we can do it in a way that's really mindful. We're not going to ask you to jump over into the deep end. You make a ladder and you slowly work up that ladder. And I was doing this, and then I realized I wanted to do more of it. And what I decided was I was going to convert my blog into the Tranquility BLOG. And most of my anxiety is social anxiety. So in every single episode, I show myself facing a fear, and I tell the audience where on my fear hierarchy that stands out of 10 points. And just so you know, like for someone who has social anxiety, walking around in public with a camera like this, on this weird tripod, talking, and everyone else looking, being like, what's this guy doing right now? It's pretty awkward. By the way, do you guys want to say hi to the vlog? Thank you. So, having this vlog has really changed my... Oh, did I ruin everything? There it is. Has really changed my relationship with anxiety. Because, for example, 2 weeks ago, when I was having coffee with Greg, he asked me, Joel, do you want to do this presentation? And usually I would find excuses to say no, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm terrified right now. This is my nightmare. Right now, this is a 9.0 on my fear hierarchy. And then Greg had this brilliant idea. Joel, you should also play guitar at this thing. Thanks, Greg. We're now at a 9.5. But isn't that really interesting? Because it seems that some of the things that a lot of us are the most anxious about are usually the things that we want the most out of life. Which is why I think that anxiety and depression live so closely together. People who are anxious often do not take the risk to go after what they really want and start avoiding the things that make them anxious, and they don't ever attain their goals. So before playing this song that Greg so wants me to play, no, I'm just kidding, I'm happy to do it, I want to just leave with kind of 3 different points. The first one being that burnout is not always what we may think it is. It might not always be working too hard every single day. It might be going to a job every single day that you do not feel appreciated in or that you do not find meaning in. And after a while, you will become too exhausted to do that anymore. The second is, when it comes to anxiety, facing your fears, you can do it in a really mindful way where you slowly take steps to face the things that you fear the most. And the third is that not all physical symptoms are based on physical problems. Sometimes they are based on our mental health and our emotional well-being. So, in terms of this song, the reason why I really did want to play this song is I wrote this song before ever figuring any of this out. I wrote this song about, the idea was, I'm going to write this song to a doctor because I want this doctor to dissect me, tell me what the hell is wrong with me, and then I'll do whatever he tells me to fix it. It turns out that subconsciously, somehow I knew. Because if you listen to the words today, this song wasn't about me finding a doctor to do that. It was about me finding a psychologist to help me figure out how I need to do it. And it was really interesting because, like I said, I wrote it before ever meeting my psychologist. But on my last session with my psychologist, I decided to bring my guitar and play it for her. Because in a weird way, I wrote it about her before I ever even met her. So, the name of the song is called Wake Me Up. It goes a little like this. And let's see if I can get my lav mic turned off and this mic turned on. Check. Perfect.
Let's look inside. Deep down it hides. What can you find?
in the Sooner room at the Casino Nova Scotia. Outstanding, Joel.